So welcome to the Deal Finder Corner. So this is your weekly property talk show brought to you by Property Filter, hosted by myself, Guillaume Black, your favorite Frenchman, the CEO and co-founder at Property Filter. It's the UK's highest rated platform to find deals, and we are on a mission to empower our property investor and deal sourcer members to find another 1,000 deals this year again, thanks to the Property Filter blueprint. And the purpose with your Deal Finder Corner is to give you more and the best of the available resources by inviting expert guests who will share with you the latest and most current strategies, tactics, and secrets about what actually works right now in terms of finding and making deals and the reality of systemizing and running a high-performance business in property. So it really is my pleasure to introduce to you my very good friend on today's Deal Finder Corner, Mark Shaw. So Mark is the lifestyle investor himself. He's been investing from his laptop using creative solutions. And in the last year alone, he did 50 deals working 2 hours a day with no or little of his own money. He's been investing in property since 1988, built, operate, and exited estate and letting agencies he's built since 2003. He's got a wealth of knowledge and first-hand experience gained from working in real markets, dealing with agents, vendors, landlord, buyers, contractor, investors. Mark is a master of goal setting, weekly and daily routine for execution. He likes a challenge, from working 100,000 steps in one day for charity to dropping below 5% body fat in his body transformation, all the way to cracking nuts with certain body parts. So hopefully he'll tell us more about that later today. Mark is retired, financially independent, and runs a private lifestyle investor mastermind program for which he opened the doors just twice a year. So what you can expect from today's episode: so proven blueprints for finding, identifying, and agreeing lease options and delayed completions, raising private finance, and this session really promises to leave you with a very, very different perspective on how to invest in property. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing what Mark's has got to share with us today. So please give a massive Property Filter virtual welcome to Mr. Mark Shaw.
All right, well, thanks all wavy people. Right, so do you want me to just share the screen at this point?
Yeah, whatever flow, works for you, Mark. The floor is all yours. Yeah.
Right. So as he's alluded to, I'm a self-proclaimed lifestyle investor. What I want everybody to do at the beginning of this session is ask yourself the question, and it all comes down to: do you like the idea of investing in property from your laptop? Your main focus should really be low money down deals. And you should get to the point where you're really comfortable raising private finance in an ethical way. But most of all, what should be appealing to you is that all your communication should be by email. We kind of don't want to be bothering with the phone. We certainly don't want to be having direct to vendor conversations. So if this all appeals to you, you're going to find this talk, shall we say, enlightening, because this is exactly how I invest. This is exactly how I've invested for years now. So again, it's been alluded to, so I'm not really going to go through this again, but the importance of the fact that I've actually started and run my own estate and lettings agencies is that this isn't just something that I've learned on the course and I'm regurgitating it to people. This is where I've been to courses and I've grabbed a concept such as Lease Options back in 2012. And then what I've done is I've actually crafted it into, if you could say, an art form. And it is an art form. When we're negotiating with people, we know roughly exactly where the negotiations are going to end. Before we even start negotiating on a property, we know what figure that we're going to take them to. And this has all come from just being on the front line. We're talking, well, I've been talking with vendors, with the letting agents, with contractors. I've sourced properties we've refurbished. But most importantly, I know how estate agents and letting agencies, how they think. So one of the big problems you have with people is that I've been to the estate agent and there's no deals. The letting agent says that none of their landlords want to sell. That's because you're not actually seeing it and understanding it from the agent's point of view. So one of the main benefits in this blueprint I'm going to share is that it's actually being put together, educating agents in a way that they understand and they will actually work with you. So when they're sending you a deal, they're not sending you a property, they're sending you the vendor's problem, what the mortgage payments are, how much is outstanding on the mortgage, how much they need from the property, why they need that. So you're getting a full scenario of facts. And as I said, I'm retired and financially free now. I've bought and sold lots and lots of properties, but my current portfolio exists of over 80 properties. And another benefit of being a lifestyle investor is that we systemize everything. So I actually self-manage those properties now, and they take on average between 20 and 30 minutes a week of my time. So what I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be sharing you a proven blueprint, and I use this in all my investing. My current portfolio includes residential property, commercial, HMOs, land, blocks of flats, and more recently a hotel. All these have been acquired through low money down strategies. Okay, if I've raised investor finance, I've raised investor finance not because I need it, but because we've kind of got to that level now where we don't go looking for private finance, which I'll cover later, but all the private finance investors are actually referred to us. So it's really a case of now not turning them away and just paying them a fixed rate of return. So although we use private finance, we don't really need to. But I'm going to show you a very systemized way to actually build your network of private investors. I'm still an active investor, and I just use this blueprint. I don't deviate from it. My most recent completions were just before Christmas. It was a block of flats, which I'll touch on in a second, and 3 new build properties. So this isn't something I'm trying to teach now because I need to teach it. I'm still predominantly an investor. It's just that this is a spin-off where I can sort of coach others to invest the way that I do, which is through the Investor Mastermind program. So these are the 2 that I completed on just before Christmas. Now, this one on the left is a block of flats. This came from a lettings agency. And all it was is that we'd educated this particular letting agent on what deals that we want and when to contact us. So one of the things we teach is that you want to work with letting agents that don't have a sales department. So when they get a desktop valuation request from a landlord, or the landlord phones them up and says, I'm thinking of selling the property. I'm going to have an estate agent come and collect keys, or can you arrange access with the tenant? The letting agent knows that that's the trigger point now to start promoting my services. Okay, there's lots of benefits for the landlord. You've not got to pay estate agency fees. You've not got to disrupt your tenants. Some tenants will actually move out as soon as they know that you want to sell the property. So this block of flats, and it's the entire block, came to me through a lettings agency. Because it was off market, I got a substantial discount. Because it's fully tenanted and fully compliant, I've literally had to do nothing with this property at all. So that's a really easy addition to slip into your portfolio through a lettings agency. And as it happens, this was actually owned by a social housing provider. So we had to do a lease option on one of the flats just because they've got a long-term tenant. So we've not bought 5 flats, we've bought 6 flats, but 1 through a lease option. And that came through a letting agency. And then on the right-hand side here, you've got 3 new build properties. Now, the traditional route might be you buy a plot of land, you find an architect, you employ a builder. The way that we invest is that this developer borrowed the funds off me, paid me 15% per annum. That financed the build. And because I actually loaned them the money, I got it at a substantial discount. So at the end of the build, I use finance on this one to buy the properties. The purchase price pays back the builder. I get the substantial discount, but then the builder pays me all my interest at 15%. And these will actually go out to tenant buyers because they're outside of my area. So what exactly is a lifestyle investor? Most of you will be aware of what I call the traditional property investing route. So you're going on Rightmove or Property Filter, you're doing your own due diligence, you're booking in lots of appointments with agents, probably doing lots of viewings, evenings, weekends included. Then you tend to put the offers forward and you tend to get a lot of rejections. So you tend to go back and then you put some counter offers in. If you do get something accepted, the chances are that you're going to have to raise some sort of finance, a 25% deposit. And then after 4 to 6 months, you might get the set of keys to your investment property, which is all well and good if you've got the time and the money and even the know-how, but it's a very slow way to scale your portfolio. You know, you're buying 1 or 2 properties at a time, or you might get a block of flats, but it's very, very slow. Now, I want you to compare this with how I invest as a lifestyle investor. And I value my time and resources more than anything else. So as you go through some of these case studies, the first thing you're going to notice that they've probably taken about half a day of my time, and that's filling out paperwork. The majority of them I've not visited because I value my time. So we don't go and view properties until the offer's been accepted, because we don't want to waste anybody's time. And then if the offer is accepted, we will go straight round and view the property or send somebody because the agent really wants to tick their box. We communicate only by email because most email communication happens in the evenings when the vendors can sit, at home discussing your email and sending you the questions. We very rarely take out mortgages. We either use private finance or we take over other people's mortgages through delayed completions. So we generally complete on exchange on properties within 4 to 6 weeks, not 4 to 6 months. So if you can think about it from the vendor's point of view, or the estate agent's point of view, where they get paid on exchange, it's a big incentive for them to work with us. And when we're educated agents, when I was an estate agent, this is what used to happen. Somebody would come in and say, do you have any investment properties? Or could you send me what you've got that, and then they would give an example of what they're looking for particularly. You've got to be very, very specific with an estate agent or a lettings agency. So the lettings agents, the valuation that came from the lettings agency, the property that came from the letting agents, they were clearly told, if you have any landlords that contact you for a desktop valuation or because they want to arrange access for an estate agent, can you contact me at that point? I will have a look through the property details, and if I'm interested, would you send this email through to the landlord? So I'm actually putting the landlord template together for them to send to the landlord. Because if you ask an agent to do something like that, you've just caused them extra work. Plus, it's not work that they're accustomed to. So it would just get moved to one side. So you're literally putting the email to them for them to forward on. So it's now become very, very convenient. An assisted sale, which I've been told that most people here understand terms like assisted sales and lease options. An assisted sale, think of how you would actually explain that to an estate agent. So an assisted sale is basically where you agree a price, you go and carry out the refurbishment, and then you put the house on the market to sell, but you've never bought it. So basically you've paid for the cost of the refurbishment, but you keep anything above the original purchase price, which is the most efficient way to flip a property. So think of it from the estate agent's point of view. Now, this is all done by email, but this is kind of how a conversation would go. So, Mr. Estate Agent, I understand what the situation here is. You've got a large property and it's not going to achieve the price that the vendor wants because it needs too much work. It needs a refurbishment. However, I understand why you've put it on at that price, because if you didn't, they would have gone with a competitor. Now, you know that this property is not going to sell at that price. And over the next 12 to 13 weeks, the feedback you're going to get is it needs too much work, or you're going to get offers that are too low. And that's going to upset your vendor. So at some point in the next 13 weeks, you're going to lose this property to a competitor. So you've explained to an estate agent from their point of view exactly what the issue is. So then you say, but I'm in a position where I can offer your vendor close to the asking price, a price that she would accept. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to refurbish the property, and then I'm going to put it on the market to sell with yourselves. And I think we can agree that if I do all this work, put a new kitchen in, put a new bathroom in, that she will achieve the price that she wants. He completely understands this. And then I've carried out the refurbishment, so I'm going to keep everything above that. But you get paid on exchange, and you get a second fee when you sell it for me in 7, 8, 9 months' time. So he's fully understood the concept, how it works. Okay. The next thing you do, you put the email together to send to the agent, and the agent sends it on to the vendor. But this time, he's promoting you now because he understands how it's going to work. But more importantly, he's now got a way that he can get the price that his client's happy with. Now, the way that this will actually work when you've started educating the agents is that at the time they get their valuation sheet on their desk, they'll think that's overpriced. They'll read the details and then they'll understand that it needs some work. So they're already thinking of you at that point. By the time they get to the property and realize this isn't going to sell at this price because it's dated, they're already promoting you or have you in mind to do an assisted sale on this property. Does that make sense? A few nods. Okay. So it's all to do with how you educate agents, and then all communications by email, which we'll touch on later. So to give you a snapshot of a lifestyle investing method, I like to call it, is this is a 10-bedroom hotel. It's got a little flat behind it. Now this is on an existing rent-to-rent agreement. So you can use this to actually convert any rent-to-rent agreements into lease options. And at this point, the vendor's not receiving any income because the operator's not been paying any rent. It's just coming out of COVID. And this was actually referred to me by a Mastermind member because they thought a hotel was perhaps too big for them. They didn't know how to operate a hotel and how do you pay for something like this. But what we've done is we joint ventured on this because it was quite early on in the Mastermind. And it's a case of, it's not how much money you've got, it's how you structure the deal. So the terms agreed on this, it was a 3-year lease purchase option, or lease option I prefer to call them. £23,000 option consideration, which is the deposit. So that's the capital that we've put into this deal. And we're making £3,000 a month payments to the landlord, but they're deductible. So what actually this equates to is £108,000 interest-free loan. And the reason that came about is that the first question we asked is, well, what rent should you have been receiving on the rent-to-rent? £3,000. Okay, we're happy to pay £3,000. Okay, yeah, fair enough, but that's what the other guy said. Okay, but what if we actually pay you a 5% deposit to show how committed we are, which is where the option consideration came from. So you can see how that was put together. We literally just mirrored the rent to rent, but in a way that we could actually buy this property. Within a week, we'd agreed terms with an SA operator to take this off our hands on a 3-year contract, and they're paying us £7,300 a month. We've had no work to do. We've got no operational cost at all. And because it's in an Article 4 area, once the operator was running it as a hotel, we got planning permission to convert this back into 2 HMOs, which it used to be. So thinking about your exit, it might be easier later on to sell 2 HMOs rather than a hotel. And in the 3 years, which is coming up shortly, we've had an uplift of £475,000. But the key here is that we've had £180,000 rent. But I think it's on the next slide, actually. To summarise, the total capital that we've actually got invested in this is just over 28,000. The email communications, the whole negotiations of this process took place over, I think it was 6 or 7 emails over 3 evenings. We hadn't viewed the property. We hadn't met the vendor. We hadn't spoke to the vendor. It was all done through email. There's the profit, less than a day. But that's the return, over £2,000, over 2,000% return on investment. Because the only cost that we've got here is the £23,000 option consideration, which is coming off the purchase price anyway, and then the legals. But what I want to get over to everybody is that this is a big building that you wouldn't normally think that you could buy. And it's a big hotel that you wouldn't really want to think I can operate it, or I don't want to employ staff. But we've not. We've negotiated really good terms. We've made the vendor happy, and we've literally just passed it on to somebody else to run for us. Okay. Now, when this actually comes up for renewal, we'll look at the guaranteed rent model again, but we'll also want an increase in the amount if they go above a certain occupancy level. So what's good about this is it's a deal that can be done, parked, and then you just move on to the next one. So this is one that's always running in the background for you. So when we go back to why you want to be thinking of this mindset shift about why you want to be considered a lifestyle investor as opposed to a traditional investor, it's because you're saving your time and your resources. You know, a hotel, you just put no time in, £23,000. You increase your conversion rate because you can now do deals that other people can't, because we're going to go through the the low money down model. So for instance, not many people could actually convert a hotel, but it wasn't that difficult. It was just like any other property. It was just a bigger building. And you will have access to more deals because the agents will start bringing you deals before they take it to market. A letting agency that doesn't have an estate agency side, they're going to bring you all the deals where landlords want to sell. When you put an email together for your letting agent, they will send that letting agent to all their self-managing landlords because they're not getting paid from their self-managing landlords, so they've got nothing to lose. But if one of the self-managing landlords agree a sale, they're going to get the management of the property, or at least a referral pay. Now, I know that when I had my lettings agency before I sold it, we had over 1,500 self-managing landlords that we could email. Okay, all the letting agents are like that. You just need to explain to them how they can work with you. And you'll optimize your returns. So if you think of an assisted sale, you're not putting your money into a property, you're literally just paying for the refurbishment. Because you're not buying the property, you're not paying the 3% stamp duty. So your margins are much higher. And one thing that we do, if it's a big refurbishment, we'll joint venture with the contractor so that we don't have to visit the property, we don't have to get involved. And the contractor will actually do the work, pay for the work, use all his contacts for a share of the profits. So again, it's one where you do the deal from your laptop or by email, agree, and then somebody else goes in to do the work. So how? Well, first of all, we work from the laptop and we communicate by email. Like I say, we don't do viewings until the offer's been accepted. Now, a lot of agents will actually say, but no, we can't let you view a property, we can't let you offer on a property before you view it. But they can, that's just their rule. If you're speaking to the owner of the estate agency, they will agree because they don't want to waste time. If you're speaking to the agent that actually gets to drive to the property and get paid for standing around and then driving back, they're likely to say, no, we don't do that. But if you actually explain to them, look, I don't want to waste anybody's time. I can see all the photographs on Rightmove or Property Filter. You know, I'm very experienced in this area. I've got other properties. I'm going to put an offer forward. Can you put it to the vendor and I will view it? If the offer's accepted. If it's not, nobody's time's been wasted. And more often than not, the vendor will say, yeah, let him go ahead, I will accept it at that price, or they'll come back with a price that they're happy with for you to decide. But either way, you're not viewing a property until an offer's been accepted. You haven't got time to keep going around viewing properties if your offer's not accepted. We use delayed completions as our first point of call. That's our first consideration unless it really, really makes sense for us to use cash, which is generally only title splits, I found. And we always look to raise private finance constantly. We're educating estate agents and letting agents. You can educate an estate agent probably in about 9 different scenarios. So every time that scenario comes up, they'll think of you. If you're dealing with somebody in the office, one of those scenarios would be, do you have any properties where the sale was agreed more than 4 months ago and it seems to be going slow? And then they'll be thinking of properties. So they'll think of you and then they'll give you more information because they have to report any offer you put forward to the vendor, even if the sale's been agreed. And when we're raising private finance, we're not raising funds to put into a project. We're not offering charges on property. We're not offering security. We're not offering personal guarantees. And we're not offering profit shares unless there's a loyalty bonus involved and you want to reward an investor that's been with you a while. They're simply investing in our companies for a fixed rate of return. And the only security they've got is the loan agreement that if you don't pay them, they can take to court. Okay, you don't need to be paying high rates of interest in property groups. So we're going to go through that in detail. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I understand that you've already had people on here talking about lease options that have gone through what like the basic structures. So there's no point in me really repeating that. I'm going to tell you how to find them and how to convert them. But basically, a lease option is just an obligation. It's an obligation to buy the right, but not an obligation to buy the property during the option period. Now, for me personally, what this means is that I'll agree an option, and if it's for 5 years, at some point before that 5 years, I will sell it on to somebody else, so I've never owned it. That's probably about 80% of the options that I do. The other 20% will be where I'm going to keep them as longer term assets. So I'll be completing on them and then refinancing them at a later date. My intention at the outset is that I'm going to complete on this property myself. It's kind of a generic term for other things like exchange and delayed completion, installments, options, or reverse options. But the number one piece of advice is never refer to it as a lease option. If you mention a lease option to a vendor and they mention it to somebody else, it's going to put them off. If they Google it, it's going to put them off. If they mention a lease option to their accountant or solicitor and they're not what you call professional portfolio landlords, they're going to be put off. So the term that we use always is a delayed completion. Everybody understands a delayed completion. Estate agents, solicitors, vendors. It's just at this point, this early point, they're assuming that it's a delay of perhaps a week. But when we take it to email and we're talking about the advantages of what we're offering, then it starts to make sense that the delayed completion's longer, but they understand the benefits and why it's appealing to them. If we actually said to somebody on an assisted sale, we go straight in and I'll offer you £300,000 with a delayed completion of 9 months, they're not going to be interested at all. 9 months seems too long at that point for them. Okay, so we go in with a shorter period, and by the time we exchange, we've extended it, because by email, we've explained the reasons why. The reasons being is the work's still only going to take 4 to 5 weeks, but when we resell it, I don't know whether the buyer is going to be in a chain, so we need a longer delay. However, it's in both our interests to complete as soon as possible, because you get your £300,000 and I get the cost of the refurbishment back. You've got to actually approach it in a systemized way. And when you're exercising the option, there's basically 4 ways that you really want to be using them to make yourself the investment return. The first one, and by far the most common, as I've touched on, is that you're going to do the lease option and sell it or assign it to a third-party buyer at some point in the future. So if it's a 5-year lease option, at some point within 5 years, you're going to sell this without actually owning it. By far, that's the most common method. You can complete on it yourself at the cheaper price you agreed with the vendor, and you can complete on it for cash, or you can use finance to buy it at that price. The benefit of actually buying, the benefit of buying it at the purchase price that you agreed at cash is that obviously by the time you exercise the option, the property price would have increased. So you would literally buy it cash and then refinance it straight away at the market value. So normally you get all of your money out plus some. You can assign the option on to another investor. The only time I personally do that if the property is outside Nottingham. I don't really deal outside Nottingham. But you will always lose money on that. It's just a personal choice. You'll always make money if you keep it as an option. Or commonly at the moment is that you renegotiate a brand new option before the first one ends. So a recent example of this was we were coming to the end of a 5-year lease option. I emailed the vendor, asked how she was. We're coming to an end. Would you be interested in repeating the terms? And it was a case of, on the original one, I paid the £3,000 on exchange option consideration. So I just thought, more than happy to pay you another £3,000 if it comes off the purchase price. Now, this lady hasn't had anything to do with the property for 5 years. Yeah, she's not interested in what it sells at because it was already 5 years ago. She can't even probably remember the price that was agreed. What she's interested now in is another £3,000. And again, she'll probably have nothing to do with the property for another 5 years. So it's a really easy way if you actually want to extend the lease option. The benefit for me on that one is it's on a repayment mortgage. So I'm actually paying the debt down with each month. And the property price, the property's a starter home and it's gone up a lot in value. So why not keep the mortgage going? Your main profit streams are, with a delayed completion or low money down, you generally get a favourable purchase price because you're providing a solution. You've got your net monthly cash flow. So my average lease option is 5 years. So I've had 60 60 months worth of rent. You generally get an uplift in value. You've got an uplift on anything that's done to the property. You've got the market appreciation, and then obviously you've got any rent increases that you introduce. But most of all is the saving in opportunity costs. So if I'm not having to tie up 100 or 200,000 pounds in a property, I'm only putting 3,000 pounds down or 23,000 pounds down, and then not taking any of my time up, I can scale very, very quickly. So if I've got 200,000 pounds in my pot, I want to use that for multiple properties rather than just one flip. Now, one thing that I've noticed in our group is that people say, well, how do we actually calculate what the property is going to go up in value? Shall we work to a 4% capital appreciation? You can't. With lease options, you will never know how much money you're going to make on this property. You will just make a lot of money because there's so many things that you can't take into account. You can't take into account whether you're going to get a premium, whether you convert it to a tenant buy option, how much the property is going to go up, the rent increases. Because what will happen is in that 5 years, there will be a trigger where you decide, I'm going to see whether I can sell it now. One trigger might be that tenants leave. So you put it on the market for a couple of weeks to see what price you can get. You might refurbish it, put tenants in it. And because it's a refurbished property, you'll get a one-off premium from the tenants. So now's the time to try and sell it on the market because your buyer is going to be interested in the yield and the fact that it's fully compliant and it's fully refurbished. So you're going to get a premium. Okay, so there's never any way to know at that time how much money you're going to make, but just trust the process. You will make money. You just don't know when. You'll have covered the main information you need, like outstanding mortgage and terms. But as you're going to see from the blueprint, you need to know the reason for selling, because that's going to give us the scenario, which will give us the problems, which will give us the solution, which will get us the deal. We need to know what their plans are for equity, because this is going to determine what we offer them on exchange as the option consideration, or better to term it a non-refundable deposit, because we never use legal terms. So a non-refundable deposit, like a delayed completion. So one lady, for instance, she was selling her property. She was a reluctant landlord. She used to live in the property, but she moved out the area, had tenants in it. The reason she was selling is that she wanted to do a refurbishment on her own property. How much did she need? She wanted to put a new kitchen in. Well, if I actually give you £5,000 on exchange, would you be interested in agreeing this purchase price? And then email, we're explaining the delayed completion. But the bottom line is she only wanted £5,000 out of that property. So that's how much we offer on exchange. And then we take over all the responsibilities with the lease option. So the key is to find out what they're going to be using that money for. Because you'll find that most people try and sell a property and all the money or most of the money is just going to sit in the bank. They've got no real reason for it. To sell it other than a smaller amount. And then we need to know what the monthly payments are, because obviously we're going to be taking over the monthly mortgage payments. General overview of key points. The longer the term, the more you can. So initially you want to try and get as long a period as you want. Usually within a 5-year period, you'll get rid of that option because you will have made all your money and you would have moved on to something else before the end of the option period. But if it's 9 years left on the mortgage, go for an 8-year lease option. And the reason you can offer them more now is because you're going to get 60 or 72 months worth of rent. You're going to get the rent increases, the capital appreciation. So if something's on the market for 150,000, you could offer them that 150,000 to beat all their competition. You could even offer them more, because you know how you're going to make the money, because you're not having to put much money down and you're actually benefiting from all the 5 years worth of rent and capital appreciation. Have any payments you make deducted off the purchase price. So we've had lots, skip hire, house clearance. We've cleared somebody's arrears once. We've cleared somebody's credit card debt. Anything that you pay out to incentivize that vendor to do the deal with you have taken off the purchase price, because they're not bothered about that. The purchase price is years away. Their main focus is on what money they're going to get on exchange, and whether you can actually help them before exchange, such as paying off a credit card debt. Now, one of the points is people think that lease options is all about finding people that are in financial trouble. I've never ever done a lease option with somebody in financial trouble. Okay, these are non-problem properties. You're just offering solutions that they hadn't actually thought about. And then negotiations continue until exchange. So I'll use an example for this. My personal strategy is profit and longer term assets. I'm not interested in cash flow. I just want to make some properties. I just want to make the money and build my pot up, and some I want to hold long term. So say we're in a situation now where exchange is set for next week. The solicitors have got all the paperwork. We're just waiting for the exchange date. I'm paying this person £2,000 on exchange. I'll drop them an email and just say, just to confirm that we're due to exchange next month. I don't know whether it's of interest, but I'm happy to pay an additional £2,000 on exchange in return for, and then think of yourself, do you want a longer option period or do you want more knocked off the price? So one that I did, for instance, I gave her an extra £4,000, but she knocked £9,000 off the purchase price, because the £9,000 is 5 years away. The extra £4,000 is next week. So you focus their attention there. Okay. And the best part about this is that you're finishing the email by saying, no problem if you, or obviously you make it need to because it's an email, but no problem if not, the solicitors, I'm still happy to exchange next week. It won't delay matters, as the solicitors literally just have to amend the contracts. So it doesn't delay anything. So it's not, you're not coming across as you're trying to renegotiate because you know you're close to exchange. You're offering them an extra, I don't know, £2,000, £3,000 or £4,000. You don't have to. It's just something that you can do if you want something out of the deal a little bit later on. So my blueprint. You don't get simpler than this. Grasp the concept and build it out yourself. Okay. So the first thing you do is you understand the vendor scenario. Every property sale has a scenario. And what you've got to be thinking of is, it's one of those. Oh, it's one of those. And then your estate agent are also thinking, it's one of those. It's one of those. So a couple are splitting up. That's a divorce. It's one of those. The landlord's downscaling his portfolio. It's one of those scenarios. It's a rent to rent that's gone wrong. One of those scenarios. You get the idea. So when we know what the scenario is, we go on to step 2, which is we understand the potential problems. Now, not all these problems might exist in the vendor's particular circumstances, but we're not looking at the vendor's circumstances at this point. We're looking at the scenario. Every scenario has 3 to 5 main problems. Okay, the divorce couple, yeah, the problems, even if they're not aware of all the problems, what would normally happen is the guy moves out, goes into a flat, the lady stays at home with the children, but what's happened is the household income has now been split, but the expenses are still there. Okay, when they do sell the property, chances are there might not be a huge amount of equity in it, and it's got to be split. So there's not going to be a huge amount there. The problem is likely to be when that lady moves out and she wants to go into alternative accommodation, which will generally be rented. They both go into rented. And because she's not normally in full-time employment, because she stays at home with the children, she's not going to get great accommodation from letting agents. The problem for her, even though she's not aware at this point, is where is she going to move to if she sells the property? The solution, we pay 6 months rent up front for her to go into accommodation of her choice. That's the option consideration, which is deductible off the purchase price. So we found a solution there because we already recognize what the problems are, even though they don't at that point. So that brings us on to step 3. We're now understanding the solutions. Okay, so going back to the assisted sale, we look at the property. What's the scenario? It's a dated property that's not going to sell because it's priced too high. The potential problems, they're not going to be able to sell it for the price that they want for it unless they either do the work themselves or they reduce the price, and then that, obviously they're not going to get the price that they want. The solution, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do a refurbishment, pay you the price that you want, and then obviously I'm going to make that little bit on top. You see, from that scenario, imagine you've got a book, you're putting a booklet together now. So you've got assisted sale scenario. Page 1, problems with that scenario. Page 2, solutions with that scenario. And then it's really just a case of starting to communicate it by email. Now, when we're using email, what we're not doing is we're not putting a big email in front of them. We ask one question to get one answer. One question to get one answer, because you build momentum. Most people get their emails through to their phone, so they can reply straight away. As long as you don't make it difficult for them to reply. Do you have a mortgage on the property? Yes. Do you know how much is outstanding on it? Such and such. Do you know your monthly payments? Compare that to have you got a mortgage? How much is on it? Is it interest only? What interest rate are you paying? It's too much information that they're trying to find out. And communication, email negotiations don't take long. It's normally 4 or 5 emails. There's always a standard set of questions that they ask, and you already know the answers because you've done this before. You build in the templates by email. So another example, I know that this lady, she gets home, she feeds the kids go to bed at 6:30, she goes to bed at 9 o'clock. Okay, I've got between 6:30 and 9 o'clock to do the deal. Otherwise, I have to wait the next day for her to get to email. So she's going to be sitting there after 6:30 with a glass of wine in front of a laptop. So I'm asking one question, one answer, one question, one answer. And before 9 o'clock, I just want to say, can I send a copy of the heads of terms over? It's a simple 1-page document outlining what we've agreed. If this accurately reflects what we've agreed, I will instruct solicitors tomorrow morning. And all you wait for to come back is, yes, that's fine. And then I'm instructing both sets of solicitors, copying her into the solicitor that she's using that I've recommended. So I've done everything for them at 9 o'clock at night. So she's gone to bed doing the deal. This is why email is so important to use. You can't explain these things over the phone. So let's go back to the hotel. First thing we do, step 1, understand the scenario. It's a rent-to-rent gone wrong. So we're going to the rent-to-rent gone wrong page in our little book that we're starting to draft. Problems. No rent's been received. Empty property and costs. He does not want to run a hotel. He doesn't know how to sell a hotel. So now we go on to step 3. That's page 3 of our little booklet. We will pay you a guaranteed rent. We will pay a non-refundable deposit. We will take over full responsibility. We will agree a purchase price now and an exit date. See what we've done there? We've basically offered a solution to each problem that they've got. Even if they didn't know they've got the problems, we've offered the solutions to the problems that we know that they're going to have. A little bit more detail now. So this is a block of 10 flats. Okay, 10 flats, rent-to-rent agreement gone wrong. These have all got council repair notices on them. And the properties and tenants are non-compliant. What's actually happened is the operator's done a runner. So the landlord doesn't even know whether people are living in these properties. Never mind whether there's tenancy agreements in place. So this is a whole world of pain that he doesn't know about yet. So we can go to the same booklet as the hotel because it's a rent-to-rent gone wrong. The problem, no rent being paid, non-compliance. Sometimes you've got to, this is why we talk about potential problems, sometimes you've got to make them aware gently of the problems without it coming across as though you're trying to scare them. So at this point, he thinks that the council are going to go after the operator. So what we need to do by email is gently advise them of the fact, no, what will happen is when they can't track him down, they will come to the registered owner on the land registry, which is you. So at some point, they're going to come knocking on your door. Okay, so at that point, you kind of told him what's going to happen that he didn't, when he didn't realize that was the case. It's going to be expensive for him to deal with. But the big problem that we know as experienced investors is that he hasn't got the experience and knowledge to deal with 10 properties that aren't compliant, where the council's knocking on their door. Not many people have, in fairness. It would cost a lot. This is the kind of problem where I'd probably get paid a consultancy fee to deal with. because there's a lot of potential problems on something like this. Okay, but we need him to actually recognize that this is the main problem. Basically, it's not going to go away. And the reason that we need to make him aware of this is he doesn't want to sell the property. He only wants another rent-to-rent agreement. But we don't want rent-to-rents because we're not going to end up with an asset. We always want a lease option. So normal things, you know, we're going to deal with the compliance, we're going to pay the rent, we will work with the council, and we will be, remember, by email, it's a lot easier to explain this stuff. We will become the liable party. So what that actually means to the landlord is that they're not going to go after him, they're going to go after us. And we have the experience or the contacts to deal with this. But the bottom line is he's going to pass this to anybody that will actually take it. That's how you got the lease option. So the terms agreed, 5-year lease option. It's for 10 flats, it's a block of 10 flats. We're not paying any deposit or option consideration because what we've explained to him is that, you know, we're going to have to spend money on putting this right, which is understandable. The £2,500 monthly payments is what the rent-to-rent operator was supposed to be paying. So we've just matched them. Remember, like the hotel, we've just mirrored the existing agreement. And then we've got a discounted purchase price because we're going to spend money on these flats to satisfy the council. Again, to summarise, this is only taking capital of £25,000. So we're not paying it all at once. This is the repair cost over a period of time. There's the profit. But what's key is that we've come to, well, next month actually, we come to the end of the 5-year option. He's approached me to renew it for another 5 years, but he also now wants to include the freehold and the commercial units because it's worked so well. He's had nothing to do with it and he's been getting his £2,500 a month. Both this and the hotel, the vendors didn't have a mortgage. These are portfolio landlords. So don't think you can't do lease options on properties if there's not a mortgage. You're still making monthly payments to the landlord. Yeah, nice return there. So we're kind of seeing, we look at what the scenario is, the problems and the solutions. Now, this is more available for everybody. You know, I wouldn't recommend that you can all do the hotel, but the 10 flats with all the compliance issues might be a bit of a too big a buy. This is a simple one property. Okay, you'll get these from letting agents and you'll get these from some estate agents and you'll find them direct to vendor. So this is basically a tenant that's in arrears. It's a referral through an estate agent, and the tenant's not giving anybody access. The vendor knows that the kitchen ceiling's collapsed, and the vendor just wants the property sold. Okay. Now this is a referral from an estate agent, and this is how we educate estate agents. So here's another little. This is how we educate estate agents scenario. As an estate agent, I know that sometimes you'll get a landlord phoning you up asking for a desktop valuation. And the first thing an estate agent will say is, to give you an accurate valuation, I need to go to the property. But the landlord knows the tenant will not give access. So it's a bit of a wasted, it's a wasted exercise for the estate agent. So I've explained to the estate agent, what's going to happen here is one of two things. First of all, you know there's a problem tenant. So first of all, you might not even get access to the property. But even if you do get access to the property, it's going to be really difficult to arrange viewings because you might get access once, but keep getting viewers going in. Second issue is that you've got a tenant in arrears, problem tenant. So even though a buyer might be happy to buy it now, further on down the process, their solicitor is going to say that you need vacant possession. And if your client could have got vacant possession, they would have done. So the chances are something's missing on the compliance. So what's going to happen, Mr. Estate Agent, is that you're going to waste a lot of time on this and you're not going to get a fee. Now, what that estate agent's been educated to do is that they'll say to the person, I know what your issues are. I know an investor that specializes in buying properties with tenants in and he's not bothered about rent arrears. Am I okay passing your details on to him? His name's Mark. Can I pass him your email address? Boom. The estate agent isn't going to get a fee on this property, but now he's got the potential of getting a fee because he knows that I'll pay the estate agency fee on exchange. The landlord will say, of course, can you pass my details on? Because she knows what the issue is as well. And then what we've done is we've took everything to email. Okay, so that's just another example of how we educate very specifically an estate agent, very specifically of what we're after. So we will get all those type of properties coming to us. Okay, so we recognize the scenario. It's an arrears or a problem tenant. So now you're onto another page in your little book. Understand the potential problems. This is why you're having the slides, so you can actually start to build your own blueprint out. So the situation's only likely to get worse. Most vendors would understand that. You're going to have a potential disrepair claim. Most vendors won't understand that. So you need to explain that if a council gets called out, you're going to have to spend a lot of money on this property, potentially. It's going to be difficult for you to sell. You might not get access, or you're going to get low cash offers. And the victim tenants can be difficult and stressful. So we know what those problems are. And remember, we're doing this by email. So, we're asking questions, are you aware of what the HHSRS is? No. And then you just put it in brief layman's terms. Now, our solutions, because we believe in a win-win, is that we're going to provide an instant and clear solution. In 4 weeks, we're exchanging, so they've got certainty. It avoids any further expenditure for you. You're not going to spend any more money on this property. Don't worry about any compliance issues. I'm going to deal with them. Don't worry about taking the tenant to court. I'll deal with it. So what you've done is your breath of fresh air now that's just come along and took away all their problems and agreed to purchase the property off them. Now what we're starting to do is we're starting to think, how does this fit our plan? So generally, with a problem tenant, we know that we're going to get a lease option out of this, as long as we communicate it right by email. Either the tenant's going to clear the arrears, or they're not. If they don't, we regain possession. And we know we'll get possession, worst case, after 9 months. And I'll explain how in a bit. Okay. So we've got a very tight framework that we know is going to work here. When that tenant moves out, we're going to refurbish the property. We're going to re-let it to professionals. It's a premium rent because it's a freshly refurbished property. And then we're going to sell it to a third-party investor buyer so that we're getting cash flow up until the date of completion. That, in about 80% of lease options, is the plan that I use. If it's a really nice building, I might refinance it and keep it. But this is about easily 80% of the options. We need the general information that you're already aware of. This is before we've viewed it. We know that we're going to have to get the compliance and the rent details, which we can get from the landlord and from comparables. We don't need to go into the property. We can work to the fact that this is a 3-bedroom property. It's terraced. There's only so much that can actually go wrong with it. So you kind of roughly know what the refurbishment cost is going to be. The key thing is you want a new tenancy agreement before you exchange, because you need to know that you can get that tenant out before it gets to court, through the court process. So when you do a lot of these problem properties, one of the main problems is the landlord doesn't have the compliance in place to get them out through the courts, or using a Section 21 anyway. Okay, so we want to cover ourselves before we exchange. So we're getting the heads of terms agreed, and we're instructing solicitors. And then at that point, that's when we start asking about the compliance. Because if we start asking the vendor if they've got all the relevant certificates and they haven't, we might scare them off. But if they've committed to a solicitor and they've instructed them, they're more willing to work with us. And we're still going to be saying, I'll deal with the compliance. You just have to decide whether you want to take it off the purchase price or not. Now, before we exchange, I recommend that you visit the property, or you send somebody around to visit the property. And with a problem tenant, you're doing this for 2 reasons. First of all, you're trying to suss the tenant out. If you're not comfortable with it, if it's a big guy with lots of tattoos, angry looking face and a baseball bat in his pocket, you might not want to do this deal, right? But most tenants, if they're in arrears, there's some sort of issue that's gone off in the background that you probably aren't aware of. Most tenants will try and when they know it's going to be a new landlord, they'll try and create the right impression. Okay, so very rarely will the problem tenant continue to be a problem tenant. And you're also there, secondly, to assess the condition of the property. And it's not for the refurbishment costs, because you've got that in the purchase price. It's more to do with, are there any compliance issues that I need to deal with before I exchange? If there's not an electrical certificate, you need to get that electrical certificate done before you exchange, because you want to protect yourself. And then I'm going to make sure all the compliance in place, and I'm going to sign the new tenancy agreement. Now I'm going to jump ahead, because one of the questions that I'm going to be asked later, no doubt, is how do you get that tenant to sign a tenancy agreement? First of all, the tenant will generally have an issue with the agent or with the previous landlord, the current landlord. I'm a new landlord, they want to create the right impression. But what always works is, look, I understand that you've got rent arrears at the moment. I don't know the reason why, but as soon as we've completed and I'm your new landlord, you won't owe me a penny. You will owe the landlord money, but you won't owe me. So if you go to a letting agent or another landlord and they send me a reference for the next 28 days, in the next 28 days, and ask if there's arrears on the property, I can honestly say no. Did you know if you don't make the next rent payment and I get reference in 6 weeks, I'm going to put that you're in arrears. So if that tenant thinks that they're not actually going to pay the rent, they will move in the next 6 weeks. Yeah. But either way, they're going to sign the new tenancy agreement because they think this is a way of actually getting rid of the arrears, because they won't have any arrears with me under the new tenancy agreement. I keep the tenancy agreements. I don't tell the vendor about that tenancy agreement. That's my protection. Yeah, I'm not passing it to anybody else. And then when we've completed, that's when they get dated. Okay, you'll probably ask more questions on that later. So on this one, standard option, £60,000 left on the mortgage, market price 85,000, but we'll jump ahead to the actual figures. We've agreed a £10,000 discount. That's the price of a problem tenant in her eyes. I only want a 24-month lease option on this property. My plan will be, when the tenant leaves, or if I get her out, I'm going to refurbish it, put tenants in and sell it. It's not one I want to hold on to. This is a profit strategy for me. No money up front, because the landlady knows that I might incur costs doing the property up or taking the tenant to court, and the mortgage was really low. You always want the right to assign, which means that you can sell it onto somebody else without buying it, but this is generally in the agreement anyway. And then what you want to do is always try and get a right to extend. Now, the right to extend will just mean that if for any reason that you can't complete in 24 months, for instance, the tenant didn't move out quick enough for you to do refurbishment, I can send £1,000 to my solicitor, who will send it to the vendor, and we've just extended it for another 24 months. I paid £500 towards the legal fees, and this is something you should always do if they're thinking of using their own solicitor, because you need to control both solicitors. You need to have them using a solicitor that's used to working with yours and who's experienced with lease options, because that's the number one reason why lease options fail, is that they use a solicitor that's not familiar with that type of transaction. So it's just a case of saying that, would you like to use one of my recommended solicitors? No, I've got my own. To save time, expense, and undue delay, I'm happy to contribute £500 if you use a solicitor that I can recommend, just to ensure that we can exchange in 4 weeks. And the £500 isn't the reason that they're going to tell you, but they'll accept that, and then they'll use your solicitor. But again, it's deductible off the purchase price. This was sold at a profit with a £57,000 uplift in 24 months, because you get to add the rent. That's the key thing. You get to add the rent to your bottom line, as well as what it's gone up in value. And the works came in at 14,000. But basically, you've got a net profit. It's 1 day of my time. She lived in my area, so I called around one evening, knocked on the door, introduced myself as potentially a new landlord, and I sized up the property and her at that time. She wasn't given access to the letting agency. Don't really need to go into that. The points to know, and you'll find this when you're dealing with problem tenants, there's always something in the background that you're not aware of and that nobody will tell you. You know, normally the agents come down too harsh, or the landlord's done something wrong, but not all the time, but more often than not, the tenant's not to blame. And this is a perfect example. The agent was the issue here. She had a repair and he hadn't done it, so she started withholding rent. And when she withheld rent, then that's where it starts to build up into arrears. So I visited her at the property as a potential new landlord. The issue where the ceiling had come down, I sent somebody around to fix a leak to the bath, 45 quid, and I repaired the ceiling. And when we exchanged, she actually paid me the 4 months arrears because she was actually only holding the money back until the repair was done. So it's a bit of a bonus. And then I got the tenancy signed before exchange. So that was the issue. Now, for lease options, if you've got a tenant sitting in there, and even if they're not paying a high market rent, but you know that you would have to spend money on that property, keep the tenant there as long as you can, because you're just killing time. You want the property prices of the market going up. You want the rents going up, not necessarily that property. So even if I actually refurbish this property, I'm not going to get my money back through the rent on the amount that I spend on it. So she stayed there for quite a while. I didn't do anything with the rent, but as soon as she moved out, then I did the full refurbishment. Then I put the new tenants in, and then I put it on the market to sell. And think of your target audience. This is about as basic a refurbishment as you can get. The cheapest Howden's kitchen. We kept the bath and most fittings, and literally it's carpets and paint. Because by the time your landlord, buyer, sees it, it's going to have all tenants' properties in that. So there's no need to stage it, spend a lot on fixtures and fittings. Just keep it as basic as you can. So the overall thing that I want everybody to understand here is that it's not the property, it's the vendor scenario that you need to consider. Okay, if you're investing in 3-bedroom ex-local authority properties, you're still going to invest in those properties. You're now just going to approach them with a low money down opportunity. So to get this to hit home, these are some of the recent ones. Okay, we've got a 2-bedroom starter home there. The landlord used to live in it, 5-year lease option. That's a 2-bedroom masonette. He wanted to sell it. He only had £10,000 equity in it. So why not let me take over your mortgage for 5 years? I'll give you £10,000 on exchange. So he's in exactly the same position had he actually sold it on the open market. But before he exchanged, I got him on a 5-year low fixed rate mortgage. Okay, so I'll just sit on that now. This one had subsidence, 10-year lease option. His problem was he was only ever going to receive low cash offers. So he was happy to do a lease option. Three very different type properties there. These were 3 masonettes. They were just all empty at the same time. 2 different type properties. Landlords downscaling the portfolios. So as you can see, they're just all so different. This is an assisted sale, and the only reason it was assisted sale is that they were hoarders. It was absolutely rammed. So when people viewed it, they were put off straight away. We literally emptied the property, redecorated and put new carpets in, and it sold. These are 11 flats. We actually title split that building, but this wasn't on the market. She didn't even want to sell. She was cash flowing £5,000 a month. She only had 2 low mortgages on them. All the tenants are compliant. The reason that she did a lease option with me is that we point out potential problems. One of the potential problems that she hadn't thought of was the capital gains tax bill. One of the solutions I could offer her was, we can stagger the completions over multi-years and I can get you access to £98,000 additional tax allowances. That's what made her do the lease options. We pointed out a problem she wasn't even aware of. But we know, because that's a scenario where landlords facing a large capital gains tax bill, we know how to provide a solution through lease options. This is a divorce. We paid 6 months rent up front for her. Negative equity. Important lesson here. This is one of my #1 rules. Never be the one to first mention a figure. The first one to mention a figure loses. This is an example. She contacted me. I think it was through an agent. I can't remember why. But she'd been on Rightmove, and this is a 3-bedroom house. She was not an investor, and she's not in the area. And she compared that to a 2-bedroom apartment across the road from her. So she based the valuation on a 2-bedroom apartment. So she thought she was in negative equity. 8-year lease option. So it's the scenarios, not the property. Broken chain. So this is where you educate an agent. An agent will know that a chain's about to break before they actually tell the vendor. So what the estate agent will know is that they need a certain amount of money out of that sale to allow them to move into the property that they're buying. When a chain collapses, we can offer them that money as option consideration, or some of it, which will allow them to actually move into the new property. Even if they agree to cash sale, they probably can't get that money quick enough, but I can get it to them within 3 to 4 weeks doing the lease option. Okay, so that's just another one where you educate an agent. So again, very different properties. These don't fit in with my investment plan, but what you'll find is that when you recognize the scenarios and you have the agents working with you, you'll just do deals because you can do deals. And what will happen is you'll just use them for profit. You'll flip them at some point, you'll get the cash flow, but it's just a way of getting funds to reinvest into your longer term assets like your hotel or your blocks of flats. Okay, and this is the beauty of this way of investing, is that you'll be doing deals without looking for them, but you'll do them from your laptop because it's not taking your time up and you're literally following the blueprint. So why not keep doing these deals? So the final 2 points, and the one that we're going to focus on very briefly now, it's not a long part, is raising and using private finance. So a lot of people go to property groups and they say, need investment, £150,000, offering 10 to 12% return or whatever. We're after short-term loans to our property companies. Okay, we use the money however we want to use it, and then sometimes we'll refinance out onto longer-term lender financing. Okay, but any loans that are coming in, we just want short-term, small amounts constantly coming into our property companies. I don't need to offer more than 4 to 8%. People in our mastermind don't offer more than 8%, so you don't need to offer more than 8% because we're not going to what you call the property investors. I'm always looking at increasing my network of investors, but I don't advertise. I don't ask for money. I rarely even say that I offer fixed rates of return, okay, because my investors are going to their network to find more investment. And I'm using short-term finance for flexibility and to avoid the red tape, but I'm also offering safe returns to my investors, because the more I look after my investors, the more they go and find other investors for me. So they're the ones doing all the hard work. And this actually came about when we started testing raising finance with our landlords. The reason we started doing it is that we knew that a lot of them were only making a 2 or 3% return on their property. So it's a way that we could actually put more money into their banks if they actually lent us money. So our average investor, the mums and the dads, the aunties and the uncles that have got money sitting in ISAs, that's the money that they're investing with. It's not large sums. So we're keeping it simple and we're making it a lot less stressful for us. So if you can imagine the stress that you're under, if you've had £150,000 come to you from one investor and you've put it in a BRR and then it's overrun and the costs have come in higher and now you can't sell it, you know, you've done everything you can, you've not done anything wrong, and the vendor's not putting any pressure on you, but you do feel bad because you've not been able to get them the money back when you said you were going to. Now, what we do is the first thing we do is we lower the barrier of entry. We make it easier for people to invest with us. So we say that, you know, we invite investment from as little as £5,000. Okay, now you can imagine there's a lot more people with £5,000 to test us than they would testing us with 50,000, especially if you're just starting out and you're not known as a property investor. And if you're approaching friends and family, they won't see you as an investor, yeah, because they've not always known you as an investor. We're now lowering their risk. We're saying that you can invest from £5,000 for a period of 6, 9, or 12 months. So now they've got a very tight agreement and fixed dates that they're investing with us. And what we want them to do, the ideal situation is to test us with £5,000 to £10,000 for 6 months. That's the perfect first-time investor for me. And we're going to pay them interest quarterly because we want them to see activity in their bank account. Whether you text them or email them when you make that interest payment, you know, often they're not even thinking about it, and then suddenly, oh, I've just been paid interest. And then this is key, because all of you at the moment are thinking, what am I going to do with £5,000? Well, I've got to give it back after 6 months. What will actually happen is, after 5 months, we will email them, because we do everything by email. And we will say, just to let you know that we're due to return your capital back next month. Would you like it paid in the same account that we paid the interest in? Because remember, we've paid a quarterly interest payment. 100% of the time, and it's been this case for the last 6 or 7 years, they will say, can I leave the money with you? Which is good. You can then just renew an agreement or let them keep it with you if you want. But this is where you say, not a problem. Do you want to keep to the same amount or increase your investment? Some will increase, some will extend to 12 months, so you do a new agreement. But then you say, I'm now happy to extend this offer to your friends, family, and work colleagues. Now, there's two things that actually happen here. First of all, the trust and the credibility is there now. Yeah, because first of all, you've made the interest payment on the date that you said that you're going to make the payment, and you've offered to pay them back, even though they've said keep the money. Yeah. So now the second thing is they'll go to people that they know, tell them about you. I've invested with him. He's offered to pay me back. I've already had quarterly interest, and he's happy to extend it to people that I know. So they kind of get a bit of a kick by offering this opportunity as a bit of an exclusive opportunity to their friends and family. And the way that this will actually work is that over time, and it doesn't take a lot of time, because you're not just doing it with one investor at a time. You might be doing it with 5 or 6 or 7, because it's only £5,000 or £10,000 at a time. And a perfect example of how this worked is there was a plumber that invested £5,000 with us for 6 months, as they all do. At the end of the 6 months, he said that we've got surplus funds in our company. Can we invest that with you? £100,000 came from his plumbing company. He then said, can my mum and dad invest with you? £80,000 come from his mum and dad. And he's now got over £600,000 with us. And it all started from that £5,000 or £6,000. But from them, there's certain investors now that we know have come through him, because it starts off a chain. So what you're doing is you're actually building a network, and it's smaller amounts. But because the smaller amounts are actually going into your company part, you can use it on whatever investments you want, because you know the dates that you've got to make the quarterly interest payments, but you've not got the pressure on you. So if you've got somebody who wants to invest 200,000 with you, you can break it down into 2 investments of 100,000 or 4 investments of 50,000 in different months. So if they didn't want you to keep the money, you know that you're covered and you've got money in the account to pay them the 50,000 and then the 50,000 the next month. Okay. So don't underestimate how quickly this could snowball. I've got £1.8 million in investor funds just from this, and it didn't take a long to snowball, because some investors will test you, and some investors will be on the peripherals. But you've got your like your business owners, your people that retired that are sitting on big funds, but they don't know where to put it. But by the time it gets to them, they probably know 2 or 3 people in their chain of referrals that have all got money with you. So you've got that instant credibility. All this is without any charge or securities. We've simply got a loan agreement for fixed rates of return to our company. So some common questions, and these aren't objections, these are questions. So what security do you offer? You've got a loan agreement, you've got a contract with my company. So if I don't pay, you just take that loan agreement to the court. Why is the loan to your company? Because most of my funds are in my company. We trade properties, we get rents coming in. I know I've got certainty of payment on the dates that I promised to make those payments. If it's in a project, you can't guarantee the dates that they're going to get their payments. What are you using the funds for? Well, just investing into different projects at different times. We like to sit on a certain amount of money that if an opportunity comes, we can move straight to it rather than actually waiting for finance to come in. What if you don't or can't repay me? We've got company reserves, of course, but at the end of the day, you can just take that loan agreement to court. Okay, but a lot of raising private finance is mindset. If you think there's going to be objections, or you think they're going to ask for guarantees, personal guarantees and security, you kind of set that tone. And although this can seem a bit confusing now about your 6, 9 or 12 months, and we pay, you know, offer investment opportunities for £5,000, remember all this is done by email. You're in control. You send an email. If they answer by email, you get to reply by email. So again, it takes all the stress off. In fact, we've actually got a template where if we send it out and if they want, we only want 2 things from them. Can you confirm, if you're interested, can you confirm how much you would like to invest and whether for 6, 9 or 12 months? And if they come back with anything other than those 2 figures, we just email them back. Can you confirm how much you would like to invest and whether for 6, 9 or 12 months? So you're taking everything to email again. Who to approach? Final part is anyone you know, your warm market. Don't go outside, don't go to social media, don't go to professional investors or people that are asking for high returns. Anybody that knows you invest in properties. Most of my fixed rate returns now come from the referrals or from landlords or vendors. So if I do actually complete on a property and I know that that money's going into his account, then I'm, you know, suggesting to him that I can provide him a fixed rate of return on a certain amount of those funds. So sometimes the funds will just come straight back to me. The lady with the title split, she reinvested with me because, you know, it's like a fixed rate and you build that rapport through email as you've been doing the deal. And, you know, if you've had a lease option with somebody for 4 years, they kind of have that trust by them. And contractors actually make good fixed rate investors. So finally, to summarize, a lifestyle investor, they value the time and the resources above all else. You always want to be considering delayed completions on literally all of the deals that you're looking at. You just need to approach it with the scenario first, the problems and the solutions. Educate the agents very specifically how to work with them. Don't say I'm after all these type of scenarios. Start with 1 or 2 scenarios. When they get their head wrapped around that, go to another couple. Pick a property on their website and say, you know, this is one of those scenarios. This is what I could have done, but do it in email so that they can reread it until they understand it. And always be raising private finance in smaller amounts constantly so it's drip feeding into your company at all times. And that's it. So thank you. I'm sure there'll be a couple of questions.
Mark, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, that was a really high value today. So thanks a lot for sharing all of that. I think you kept your promise, you know, to get people to rethink the whole way about how they can invest in property. Thanks a lot about that. So I'll go through some of the questions. Let me scroll through. So a lot of people are saying, you know, how great that was. So yeah, I'm just passing the congratulations and the thank yous. So I think reiterating about the email. So Ella was asking, so really you don't speak with the agents, you do everything by email? So
yeah,
like,
yeah, and yeah, and there's a set format for it now. You know, you might know some agents, you might have agents calling you, but what you've got to realize is that the agents won't have time to understand what you're saying to them. If you want to speak to a valuer, for instance, a valuer will normally come in the morning, get all their appointments, do the last minute research and shoot off. So you're never really going to catch them in. If you're dealing with a progressor, it's a different story. So the first thing you want to do is that you go on their website and try and work out who you want to speak to. So if you want somebody that you want to educate in any progressions that are taking too long, so you might be able to steal the deal from the buyer, you want an office-based person. So you might just go down the website and look who the sales progressors are. Okay. The only time that you would phone them is to simply get an email address for the best person to speak to. And it's going to be a very short conversation. Hi, I'm interested in, and say whatever you're interested in. Can you give me the email address for the best person to speak to? When they say, are you on our database? Would you like to be registered? What are you after? Just say, I'm just after the email. You really want them off the phone as quick as possible. And then what you're doing is you're emailing the relevant agent with your introduction. And then you're being specific what you're after. And then you take it to there and you're testing the agent. You're seeing how quickly they respond and how they respond to you. There's no point having a conversation at this point because first of all, most people do that. So it's not really going to register with them. And a lot of it won't sink in. But when they get the email, they'll read through it at the time that they want to read through it. So we're really just educating them how we're working with them, and we can give them a couple of examples. But no, very, very rarely will I actually speak to agents, and they know that I don't really speak to them, so they get used to communicating to me with me by email as well.
Interesting. So, Ken is asking, so we have a cheeky question here, you know, can we have do you have samples emails copy for to share for the lease options? I think you got a whole booklet, a whole library of these. That's your secret sauce, Mark. How is that working?
I can't share them because obviously that's kind of privilege, and you know, I've got the group for that. But what I will say to you, and I will give you advice, because as an estate agent, I picked up on this very early, is most people, when they're offering, will make one offer, a purchase price. So what happens is the agent and the vendor have only got one thing to focus on, the price. This is why people end up going below market value. You want to give them an offer in an email, and this is where you start building your own templates. So if we're talking about delayed completions, yeah, your first offer is going to be a price that's too low, that they're going to reject. Your second offer in the same email is going to be a 2-year delayed completion. The third offer is going to be a 5-year delayed completion. Okay, the 2-year delayed completion is closer to the asking price. That would normally get accepted. The 5-year lease option offer 3 is over the asking price. So if it's £100,000 property, your first offer might be £84,000. That's going to get rejected. Your second offer on this £100,000 property is going to be £95,000 with the 2-year delay. That would normally get accepted. The third one, they see 5-year delayed completion. It's going to be too long. So what's going to happen straight away is the vendor's going to see that and say, too low. That's a good price. 5 years is too long. So what you've actually done is you've directed their attention to the offer that you wanted to accept. And by picking that one, what they've done is they've kind of talked themselves into the fact that that's the best offer. The next thing they're going to want to know is, why is it a 2-year delayed completion? And most of them will come back and say, can I have a shorter period, or can you increase the offer to the same as offer 3? But what it's doing is it's getting you the email momentum going, the email conversation, where you can then start pointing out the advantages of the delayed completion. Yeah. But what will happen is you will always get a reply back that one of these 3 answers is better for them, and then that's what you negotiate on. Very rarely do you not start opening dialogue when you use that. But if you just go in with an offer, or you put an offer on by the phone, over the phone to the agent, chances are it's not going to get accepted unless you're really close, and that's not what it's about, going close to the asking price.
On this, Mark, do you ever get a scenario where they take a while to come back to you, and then do you follow up with them? Do you have little systems to never forget? Or?
No, because you know, it's a case of first of all, by the time they get to you, somebody's asking you to do the deal. It's not like we're going shopping. So if an agent's phoning you, they're the ones that are contacting you, because so they're wanting the offer from you as quick as possible. If one way of looking around it, sometimes when you're asking for information about the mortgage through an agent, for instance, they'll say, why do you want to know that information? Because without that offer, without that information, I can't make an offer to the close to the asking price. And sometimes they'll keep putting you off, but you need to make them understand, without this information, you're not going to give them the offer. So at some point, they will get that information to you, because their job is to get an offer. Everybody wants an offer from you, but don't go giving it before you've got the information that you need. So you're creating that urgency for them to do something to get the offer from you.
Awesome, yeah. And it's so the next question people will have is like, okay, so how do you get in a place where they bring you deals? You know, how do you get to a place where you build this reputation that you're the property problem solver? What is the first introduction? I know you use Property Filter to identify some of the scenarios and then go and talk to them about these things. Can you tell us more about how that works?
Yeah, it's sometimes people think, because I'm an estate agent, I've got all these contacts. Yeah, I'm an introvert. I don't network. I didn't speak to other agents, but I know how agents think. And here's a perfect example that you don't have to be seen or known to be a property expert. I was putting together a module about how to cost up a property from the photographs online. Okay, so I needed to find 2 refers where I could actually go to the property and take things like photographs of the meters, so that I had something to coach the group on. So I literally phoned up an estate agent, and I was very specific with what I was after. I'm after a 2 or 3 bedroom property up to this price in these 2 areas that need a refurbishment. Not a big refurbishment, maybe just a new kitchen, bathroom, carpets. That's all the information I gave to 3 or 4 different agents. Okay. One agent phoned me up the next morning, hand on heart, this is true. One agent phoned me up the next morning and said, I understand that you're after this, and he regurgitated what I was after. He said that I signed 2 contracts with the vendor yesterday. I'm taking photographs there this afternoon. Do you want to come down and have a look at the property at the same time? Well, I needed the photographs, so I went to meet him. And while I was at the property, never met this agent before, I explained exactly how the assisted sale works, what his problems were going to be, like I explained to you earlier. These are the issues that are going to be. I'm going to put 2 offers in now to your vendor, because he's told me the price he wants and everything, you know, normal, why is he selling, that kind of thing. I said that I'm going to get back, I'm going to put an email together. The email is going to tell you this, and then I just need you to forward that email on. And that's going to be the detailed offer. So he's happy with that. But I know that most of that's probably gone through through the next. So I get home, I put the email together, and this is key. You phone the agent to make sure the agent's in the office. Are you sitting at the desk? Yeah. I'm now going to send you this email through. Would you do me a favor? Phone the estate agent, phone the vendor, read through the email, and then ask permission to send it on. And that's all that we did. I explained everything in the email. I had the offers, the different offers that I've just talked about, made it really easy for the agent to understand, to send on. So the agent's not got to explain anything. He literally says, I've had this email from the vendor. Can I read it to you? I'm going to send it on to you. And the deal was done. 2 assisted sales agreed, but the brand new agent knew nothing about me, because you'd explained it in the terms that he understood. But more importantly, you'd put the email together that he could send on to the vendor in a way that the vendor could understand. Came back with 2 questions, quick answers, it's done. And the deal was done the next day by email. Yeah, so it's not that you're known, it's that you know how they think and what the benefits are. And the benefits are, these are the problems, benefits are my solutions.
Awesome. People ask, yeah, again about this email. I think people are a bit challenged, you know, like, so really, can you build rapport by email and things like that? So how do you, especially with the vendor, if you just had an introduction, the agent gave you the email details, how do you build rapport just solely by email with a vendor?
To begin with, if you're dealing through an estate agent, to begin with, the emails have to go through the agent. Yeah. And the way you build rapport is you have to be perceived to be working with the vendor, not as a buyer. And that's a big difference, that is. Okay. So the questions that we're asking a little bit about the scenario, because remember, we already know what the problems are. So if it's tax, for instance, it's a case of just referring to the fact that they might be facing a capital gains tax bill, or you know, if they don't necessarily want the tenants to know that they're selling the property, it's kind of pointing out, yeah, I understand why, you know, if the tenants sometimes find that you're selling the property, they'll move out, and then you're left paying the mortgage without any rent. So through the email, you're actually working with them to get information from them. You're not just putting an offer in. And when the time's right, that's when you put the offer in. Okay. So it's more sort of like a backwards and forwards. But what will happen is the agent at some point you will say, look, can I just have the land? Can you get permission for me to email the vendor direct, and I will copy you in? And normally it's the 2nd or 3rd email, because the agent's in and out of the office all the time. He'll ask that question. And as long as you're copying the agent in, you'll be fine. But what you'll find is most of your deals are done in the evenings, because that's when your vendors are actually sitting, considering and looking over your email. And that's how you get the rapport, because the guard goes down. Yeah, they're not dealing with something on their phone. The guard goes down, and then they'll ask a couple of questions from you, and then you'll just give them the answers. So it's a really smooth conversation, as opposed to, here's my offer, it's rejected. Okay, I'll put this offer in instead. So I know I can't go through it here, but what we do is we've got scripts. So we'll say, right, this is how we started the email conversation, and you'll actually see on the scripts, like 4 or 5 emails the same day, then there's a gap, then it comes in the next afternoon, and then they're going on the next evening. So you can actually see question, answer, and it flow. And it's all there. So then you've got the template. So it does sound difficult to do, but literally it's just the way that, and you do it by email because it's one question at a time, one answer. and you do it to their time, and you're not doing it all on the phone at the same time.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Then he's asking, would you be able to do this remotely, if you'll be outside of the UK, for example?
I'm a remote investor. Although I only invest in Nottingham, I don't go to properties and I don't go to agents.
Awesome.
So if I'm buying a property and it is to an agent, they'll get the occupier or the tenant to do a video walk around if necessary, something like that. Very rarely do I actually go to the properties. So it's about as remote as you can get. The only difference is that I know my area. So if you're a remote investor and you know the area you're invested in, well, yeah, of course you can.
Yeah. Mark, do you mind moving a little bit on your chair to hide the beautiful sun shining behind? Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
In your beautiful self-build. Awesome. Thanks so much. Okay, cool. Really good questions there. Does the vendor agreeing to lease options stopping them from getting another mortgage? I think that's...
Is it stopping them from getting? No, you're allowed to have more than one mortgage.
Yeah.
One of the reasons, and again, this is from experience, people don't often realize this, but one of the reasons that a vendor wants to sell a property is that they're actually moving into another property.
Yeah.
And it's more to do with the affordability of that other mortgage. Okay, but once they realize that actually it's possible for somebody to take over those mortgage payments, then that's not an issue at all. The only issue you might have is on stamp duty, because obviously if they buy another property, they've got that additional stamp duty to pay. But what you can do is that some aren't bothered. You find that most vendors aren't bothered, investors are. You can offer to pay the stamp duty, but as option consideration. So you're actually giving them the money to pay their stamp duty and it comes off the purchase price. But no, having more than one mortgage is never an issue at all.
Yeah, awesome. Sylvia is asking what happens if the vendor dies during the option period.
Pardon? A vendor dies? I'm often asked this question. It's one of the top two questions that you're asked is, what happens if anything happens to you or happens to me? Basically, the option will pass as part of the estate. So, the agreement's still in place. It's just that somebody now, it's the estate or the beneficiaries that get the benefit of the option. Me personally, I would look at actually completing on the option, just because it's an integrity kind of thing, is that it might have worked well for that vendor, but the children or whoever, the partner, might not be interested in the option. So I would look to complete on that earlier. But legally, it will just pass on until whenever you actually exercise the option.
So Simon's DM'd me about specific deals with problem tenants. So exactly some things that are fitting into your blueprint here. I don't really think we have time to go into the details of the deals to make it work. But what's the best way maybe for Simon to get in touch with you, Mark, if he wants to pick your brain on a specific deal?
Yeah, I'm only on Facebook, so Messenger through Facebook.
Awesome. So lots of thank yous, and yeah, sorry, we've overrun a little bit, but it was so valuable. We just kept going. Kathleen, do you only deal with letting agents? If you also approach estate agents, either the same way as letting agents? So I think you covered that.
I deal with
different ways. Yeah,
you'll be amazed where deals come from. You get a lot of investors, like the hotel. Actually, they thought that was too big a deal for them, so they brought it to me. There's direct to vendor, but not direct to vendor because I don't do marketing. It's where other people have done direct to vendor, and most, when they can't get a below market offer accepted, that's when they bring the deal to me, because I don't really do BMV, so I can get a deal where perhaps, that's why I said everybody's conversion rate goes up, because now you're not offering below market value offers, you're offering offers that people are happy with.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, lots of very interesting, fantastic presentation. A couple of questions, and then I think we'll wrap up. Do you ever have any trouble taking over people's mortgages? I think it's just a blueprint for that. Just follow the... Yeah,
no problem at all. The only thing you need to be aware of, are you going to pay the lender direct or do you pay the vendor direct? Always pay the lender direct, unless it's a portfolio landlord and they've got lots of properties and they can't risk missing that payment.
Oh, that's really interesting. All right. Do you specialist solicitors, and how to best find them?
Yeah, you want specialist solicitors, but you want specialist solicitors for both of them. Yeah, it's your vendor solicitor, your vendor solicitor that can mess things up. So always control. And one of the things that you offer to do is you'll instruct both solicitors on their behalf.
Yeah.
So you just made it easy for them. But yeah, always have two sets of specialist solicitors. You'll find them on the internet. Keep away from commercial firms, but there's plenty of them around.
Yeah. Okay, and you're happy to recommend Mark if people reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I use MS Law.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to use Sam Hawkins, but I think they've gone off the boil a little bit. I think they just, what happens is you make a recommendation, everybody starts using them. But MS Law kind of look after me. I've been with them since 2012, so I'll always be the top of their pile. But yeah, I mean, there's quite a few that are popping up now.
So MS Law, for you guys who don't know, we had Shimon on one of the
Yeah,
sessions
the
a few
best thing
months
you can
back.
do is speak
So
to the ones that speak to MS Law because they know it, and then say to them, look, what solicitors are you finding that you're enjoying working with at the moment?
there we go. Yeah.
Now, they won't officially recommend anybody, but they'll put you in the right direction.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Ivan's asking, what does your mentoring course involve?
Mentoring course. It's 6 months. We literally take you through the blueprint, scripts, templates. I tend to negotiate your first deals for you because you can't really make a mistake on your first one. So it's all taught through case studies. So although we've touched on them today, it's a case of this is exactly how we found the deal. This is why we negotiated it this way. We kind of handhold you all the way through. And one of the issues that you might have at the moment is that you don't know what you don't know. So I'll kind of say, look, you don't want to buy that in a company name. Buy this one in your personal name or yours and your partner's name for this reason, because this is what your exit's going to be in the future. Yeah, so I can kind of point in the direction that you need to go rather than that you think you need to go. Or I can tell you what questions to ask your accountant.
Awesome. And what's the best way for people to be aware about this? Is a case of being friend with you on Facebook, and then when the doors open, people will be aware? Or do you have any cohort opening? I know you're booked up many months in advance. What's the situation at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I messaged you personally. I've held 5 for you because obviously we've been known each other for a long time. So we've got a course. The next intake is in 2 weeks' time.
All right. Okay.
We've got 5 that I've reserved for yourself.
Oh yeah, sorry, I missed that, Mark.
So that's really down to you. But yeah, it's every 6 months, and the next intake's in 2 weeks' time.
Okay.
But if you want information, you'll see posts on Facebook. What will happen is twice a year, I'll just put Mastermind opening. I'll put what we cover.
Yeah.
Somebody will DM me. I'll again send what it actually covers, and then it's an application process, really.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, the steps. So follow, become friends with Mark on Facebook. When the application opens, say that you were on the Property Filter call, and then so you have 5 places for the Property Filter people. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Awesome, Mark. Yeah, thank you very much. It's really cool. Does your involvement with the vendor solicitors potentially reduce the independence of them?
No, because there's no conflict of interest. I'm not instructing them. What I'm doing is I'm emailing them an introduction, the heads of terms, and the vendor's contact details. And then what will actually happen is after that point, they'll make direct contact with the vendor. So after that point, after they've been instructed, they can't communicate with me. I'm literally just sending them the information and the vendor's contact details.
All right, we'll do 2 more questions, and then we'll wrap up. So, in your sellers, what's the proportion between owner occupier and investors? Do you tend to buy more from owner occupier or from other investors, landlords? And
you know, I've never even thought about it. It's just a different appeal. Obviously, anybody that's been bought to me from letting agents, they're investors. Yeah, so it depends. Estate agents, I suppose most of them are from owner occupiers, but there's a lot of portfolio landlords at the moment.
Yeah.
That's where the blocks of flats are coming from and the bigger properties because they're just exiting the market. But it's whatever deals. What you'll find is any deal that's bought to you'll just convert. You don't kind of look into these.
Yeah, awesome. And then the final question, Ivan is asking, how do you use Property Filter to find properties?
Right, okay. So I was going to include this at the end, and then I realized I'd probably go over the time. So everybody understands an assisted sale.
Yeah.
We always start with an assisted sale because it's really easy for you to explain to an estate agent how it works. So you would go on Property Filter. I'll use Nottingham as an example. Anything above £250,000, won't attract your buy-to-let investors because it won't cash flow enough. Anything over £250,000 won't attract your investors that are looking to flip because they're tying too much money in the stamp duty. So above 250,000, you've got no competition. But they're your family homes, which are generally dated and that people are downsizing from. So these are the perfect assisted sale type properties. So basically, when you go on Property Filter, put anything over 300,000, get everything that comes up in your area, and then spend literally 10 minutes Just going by the photographs, dated, keep, new, not dated, tick, 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 tick. So you're using it as a filtering system to get down to just your dated properties over 250 or 300,000. Yeah. You'll probably, there's 75 in Nottingham to give you an idea. And then all you'll do is have a quick scan around, see whether there's any agents that you've worked with before. See if there's any that you actually recognize the area that you're particularly attracted to. Focus on the ones that are empty. Yeah, because you can go in and do the refurbishment straight away. And then you'll know from the areas. So what you've done now is you've filtered them down and you've got all potential assisted sales. Now, are there any agents that you're happy with? And then look at how long they've been on the market. If they've been on the market more than 2 months, they've gone stale. Yeah. If the price hasn't been reduced, yeah, either the agent's not done the work or we know the vendor's fixated on that price, which is really good because you can offer close to that asking price. That's the easiest way to use property filter for assisted sales.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Mark. Now, you mentioned earlier about properties sold subject to contract since a long time. I know you pick up some good lease options as well there and some of your mentees as well. Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much. Any final, like closing thoughts, Mark? And then I'll thank you very warmly.
No, I mean, that's the fourth kind of thing that I've ever done. And I just get excited every time I do them. What you've got to realize is that there's just so much information. Okay, so the first thing I would suggest that you do is just focus on assisted sales to begin with, because they're really easy to identify. And think of the time of year that you're at the moment. By the time you've done that refurbishment, you're coming into the summer months when families want to move into properties that are ready to move straight into. And then when you start marketing them for sale, start marketing them when the plasterwork's fresh and the carcasses are in. Don't wait until it's fully done, because most of the sales you'll agree before you finish the work. And some of your buyers that are coming in will actually start paying for things like, if you put a certain carpet in, I've had vendors pay for kitchens so that they can pick the kitchen.
Right.
Little things like that. So don't wait until it's fully finished before you sell it, because you'll get people knocking on the door saying, what's happening with this property?
Very interesting.
Okay,
Mark, thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, was really happy to have you today, and well worthwhile overrunning a little bit. It was just a value pack, so really appreciate your time. And thank you all of you for joining today's Deal Finder Corner. Take on Mark's offer, so connect with him on Facebook, and then when he opens the door for his mastermind, reach out to him. And we have a lot of our successful case studies have come from Mark's students, so I'd love you to be one of the next one. In the meantime, visit propertyfilter.co.uk, log on to your Property Filter account, check out the deal blueprint where you can define your goldmine area, engage with motivated sellers, assess properties in seconds, load your pipeline, and actually make deals. Have an endless supply of deals. Join the top 1% of investors out there, become a high achiever deal finder. I hope you enjoyed today's Deal Finder Corner, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you.